Hi, I'm Todd Dunn, and it's August 31st, 2024. Today I'm aboard my Allied Princess 36 Seaquestor, and I wanted to talk a little bit about how I have the boat set up for short-handed sailing. And I said short-handed rather than single-handed because most of the time my wife is with me, but she has gotten a little older and doesn't do much on board anymore. Occasionally she will cast off during attack, but that's about it. Or yesterday when we were out, she actually steered the boat for about 90 seconds while I had to go below. But that's about it, really. She does not, she's mostly a passenger. So most of the time I'm effectively single-handing this boat, and I have it set up appropriately. So what I want to do is just spend a couple minutes and show you how I have the boat set up. Okay, let's start up here at the bow, and there are a couple things up here that make the boat easy for me to handle. The first is the roller furler. That is a 1997 vintage Hood Sea Furl SL. It works quite well. I've had it for quite a long time. I have had to do some work on it. I've replaced the bearings a couple times, but that's not a big deal, and it's quite inexpensive. I think it costs $2 or $3. Because I didn't buy the bearings from Hood, I ordered them from Granger or something like that. Anyway, it is a roller furler slash reefer in that I can both roll the sail up like it is now when we come in for the day, or I can partially roll it up should the wind pipe up and leave the and reduce sail that way. The other thing is, if you look up here on a sail, you can see where the sheets attach. It's pretty high up. That's because this is a relatively high cut jib. It's 130% Genoa, but it's cut high so that I can see under it. And that makes a big difference in having good visibility. So that's the sailing, and the boat. This is a new sail this year. Bought it last year after the end of the season, and this is the first year it's been used. It is a Raleigh Tasker Genoa, and I've had very good luck with Raleigh Tasker sails. Now, the other thing up here is my anchoring setup. We have an ancient, probably came with the boat, Danforth plow anchor, which is Danforth's version of a CQR. Never seen one anywhere else. And that goes to an all-chain rode, and then I have a Lumar electric windlass with foot switches, one on each side. That makes raising the anchor very simple. Just put my foot on the switch, and that little black cap you see there is where I can connect up a hose so that I can rinse the anchor chain and the anchor off as it comes up. I don't use that a lot because it's kind of a pain to get it stowed away afterwards. So that's sailing setup. Now let's go back aft and look at the next big thing about the way the boat is set up. Okay, I'm back at the Dodger, and we're looking at the main. You can see the gooseneck there on the main. Down below the winches, there is no boom. That's intentional. I do have the boom. It's at home in my garage, as is the sail. And the reason for that is I don't like to have to go forward to the mast to fool with the sail. I think it's dangerous, and I'm not as agile as I used to be since I'm almost 73 years old, and consequently I find that the boat sails quite adequately for my purposes without the main, and by leaving the main and the boom off, I cannot succumb to temptation to put the mainsail up. And also, it means that my small solar array here is not shaded by the boom. Okay, let's continue aft. Back here you can see the mizzen sail. Seaquestor is a ketch, and we use the mizzen sail every time we go out. And it does have a reef in it, although it isn't rigged, because we no longer sail in conditions where we would need to reef the mizzen. That means you're out in 30+ knots if you need to reef the mizzen. And you need to reef it when it's really blowing, because wind on the mizzen can actually keep you from tacking. So we have the mizzen, and it is, although it has a reef, it is not used. Okay. The advantage of sailing with just the mizzen and the Genoa is that I can deploy the Genoa from the cockpit simply by uncleating the furling line, which is led aft on the starboard side to a dedicated winch, and pulling the sail out with one of the sheets, whichever is appropriate. And I can also furl it up without leaving the cockpit. Same applies to the Genoa, the mizzen back here. It's very easy to, let me get down here to show you a little better. It's very easy to raise it right here in the cockpit and to drop it from here in the cockpit. So I can sail the boat without ever leaving the cockpit, unless something goes wrong, and then I'll have to go forward and fix it, but that doesn't happen very often. What about instrumentation? Well, we don't have a huge instrumentation array. Primary instruments are a compass there. That's a pretty good compass. It works well. And then we have a Raymarine chart plotter. The chart plotter can have a radar attached to it. It's got a Wi-Fi radar that'll go with it. I don't have it now. I could add it, probably will in a year or two, but we seldom go out when there's the possibility that we'll be caught in fog. So we really don't need the radar for the way we use the boat, but it could be added for about $2,000. And then over here, this other instrument is a Raymarine bi-data. It originally read boat speed through the water and depth, and also water temperature. But years ago, the boat speed paddle wheel died. I replaced it, and then the electronics for sensing it died, and it no longer reads speed through the water. It simply reads depth and water temperature. But I don't really need speed, because the chart plotter displays our GPS speed. Yeah, it'd be nice to know speed through the water so I could compensate for current, but we're never really doing sailing that's technical enough to need that. And then, just for reference, underneath the companionway there is a clinometer, so we can tell at a glance how much the boat is heeled. So that's the electronics suite. It's pretty basic, but as I said, we could add radar to it. Just an application of a little money, and that would be that. What about the rest of the rig? Well, we have on the cabin top up here, if we had the main on, that is the main sheet winch. That's one of our old primary winches. That's a Variant 22, which is about equivalent to a 40 for any other winch brand. And it's more than adequate for the main sheet. And here is one of our newer primary winches. I say newer because I think we've had them for 18 years now. This is an Anderson 40 ST 2-speed winch. And that's a very high quality winch. It's an all stainless steel winch, and I really like the way they work. And they don't chew up your lines like winches with knurled drums. This has a ribbed drum, and it works really, really well. 2 turns is all you really need unless it's really blowing. And in addition to that, you can see this little button down here. That is the switch to turn the winches on, because these are electric winches. So if I don't feel like hand cranking them, I just push the button and they will sheet in for me. Normally when I tack, I take up the slack until I can't pull it in anymore, put the line in the self-tailing jaws, and then push the button to finish sheeting the jib in. And that makes sailing a lot easier. I put those on as electric winches when 10 years ago, when I slipped on the ice in the winter, broke my shoulder blade, and for about 2 years I couldn't crank the winch without having a lot of pain. So the solution to that was electric winches. And finally, we have one more winch here. This is an Anderson 12 ST single speed self-tailing winch. That's got our furling line on it. We can furl the sail by cranking the furling line in with that winch, although normally I just hand over hand it in. It isn't that hard unless it's blowing pretty hard out. And so that is the rest of our winch system, of course with the companion winch for the sheet on the other side. Back here is the sheet for the mizzen, and a few weeks ago I replaced the original line from 1973 when the boat was launched with a new line. It had a 3/8 line on it, which was the absolute maximum size line that would fit through the blocks, and it tended to jam up and be a mess. Plus, it was it was over 50 years old, so it was something that needed to be replaced. So I put a new line on there that's 5/16 instead of 3/8. It runs very freely, and it's very easy to sheet the jib in with the multiple that you get out of the way the blocks are set up. And that's about it. Oh, we have one other thing. This is a heading sensor for the chart plotter, and the heading sensor is used if we put the radar on so that we can do radar overlay on the chart. Okay, so that's how we have the boat set up. There's one other big factor that I didn't do, and that is right here, the wheel. This boat has worm gear steering, and one feature of worm gear steering is that when you put the wheel someplace, like where it is right now, it won't move until you turn it. Now the negative of that is you get no rudder feedback, but it does make it possible to balance the boat up and not touch the wheel for quite a while. I've sailed for an hour or more without touching the wheel when I was out where I had the room to do it. So that's the way the boat is set up. In terms of sailing gear, there's one other feature, and that's we do have a diesel engine, a Westerbeek 46, which is overkill for this boat. This boat could do fine with a 35, but that's what the previous owner put in it. And back here is the control for the Westerbeek 46. That's a single lever control. You push that forward, it puts the engine in gear, and the further you push it, the more throttle you get. You push it back to the vertical position, it goes into neutral after throttling the engine down, and if you go aft with that lever, the boat goes into reverse, and the further you push it after it goes into gear, the more throttle you have. And the little red button down there, when it's pushed in, that is a pure throttle. So that makes handling the boat very easy. I don't need to fool around with multiple levers, and the engine controls are right here where I can see them easily when I'm sitting here at the helm. They used to be behind the mizzen mast, but about 10 years ago I got ambitious and moved them to there, glassed up the old hole, and it had a wooden frame which I removed and just went with fiberglass. So that's our engine control. Now the engine was put in 1987, so it's a little bit old, 37 years now, and but it doesn't have that many hours. We just turned over 1,300 hours last month. in late July. So the engine should be good for, 6,000 to 8,000 hours. So if it's gone, so that means we probably have another 200 years before it's going to really need to be replaced. Okay, and we also have a Dodger. This is the third Dodger since we got the boat. It came with one, and after about 8 or 9 years, that Dodger just died. The cloth had gotten rotten, and all the seams from constant exposure to sunlight were giving up, and it basically fell apart. So we had a new Dodger made in about 2005, and it lasted about 17 years, and we had this one made. And for a couple reasons, the windows on the old Dodger had gotten very scratched up, and you really couldn't see through it very well. And also, once again, sunlight had gotten to it, and it was quite literally falling apart, which does happen. I mean, we had it restitched once, but the cloth itself was starting to give up. This is a Sunbrella Dodger. So, but it's nice, and this one, 2 years old now, should last another 15 or so before it needs replacement. You see the zipper on the back of it? We do have a panel that goes from the back of the Dodger around the mizzen mast and back to the back of the cockpit to provide us with shade. It goes underneath the mizzen boom and ties to the mizzen boom, so you can't use it while you're sailing, but it's nice if you're going to be someplace anchored out for a day or so, and you want a little shade in the cockpit. So that's the way Seaquestor is set up. As I said, I can run the boat from here, except for docking and getting off the dock. I do not have to leave the cockpit while we're underway. One other thing, a safety thing, is our lifelines. You'll notice they're bare stainless steel. This is one of those Suncor lifeline kits I put on about 7 or 8 years ago, and it's working just fine. And I like those a lot better than the vinyl covered lifelines, because you can see if there are any issues with them, where with the vinyl covered ones you really can't. So that's Seaquestor, the way she's set up for me to sail her effectively single-handed. So thanks for watching.